The following is an Operation Podcast production.
You went through such a wild journey that the doctors were even recommending removing part of your colon, right?
No, my entire colon. Motility in my gut completely came to a halt. We call that the progestation hormone. Progesterone is also great for our mental health. I actually call progesterone our nature's valium. Progesterone actually acts on the same pathways as GABA receptors in the brain. I'd say most people are struggling with some kind of a microbiome imbalance. So SIBO is very common. And if you were to look up the symptoms of IBS, of chronic bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and you were to look up the symptoms of SIBO, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, you'd see they are very similar. In my opinion, that's the worst type of mold and how that can really impact our immune system, our gut health, and a lot of these toxins, they actually cross through our blood-brain barrier. When we put so much of our sense of worth in these things that are outside of us, at the core, we lose a sense of ourself, and that's why healing, I believe, is really a return back to self.
Is something coming up for you personally?
Hi, I'm Rachel Scheer. I'm a certified functional medicine practitioner. Welcome to Ever Forward Radio.
It's been a minute.
It's been a hot minute, 2 years.
All right, so for everyone that's new and they don't know who you are, they've never seen or heard you before, can you give us a quick breakdown of credentials, education, professional experience?
Yes, I have my bachelor's in nutrition science and dietetics from Baylor University, and then I'm certified in functional medicine, and I'm also a somatic breathwork practitioner as of recently.
That's new.
Yes,
all right.
It's new.
Okay.
Bringing in the mind-body connection to the work that I do.
Yeah. And how long would you say you have been working professionally in the
functional medicine
space? Yeah.
Since 2017 is when I launched my business.
She's legit, everybody. You hear that? Okay. So in learning more about your work and kind of diving into what we're going to talk about extensively, nervous system, stress, cortisol, gut health, functional medicine, some pretty wild stats that you talk about. And I was looking at one speech you were giving, a seminar. You were talking about how as much as 11.3% of the global population suffers from IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. But it's more women than men, as much as, or up to 24% of women compared to as much as 19%. Why do more women suffer from IBS than men?
Yeah, more women are definitely more prone to gut issues and irritable bowel syndrome. And part of that has to do with the fact that women's hormones cycle, right? So women have estrogen and progesterone levels that shift throughout the month. Around day 14, after when women ovulate, they actually start to have an increase in their progesterone levels. And progesterone can actually play a big role in our gut health as well as our estrogen levels. So because of the cycling nature of female hormones, this leaves women more prone to gut issues like constipation, bloating. So it is a lot more common in women than it is with men.
I feel like I can't open up social media or look at anybody talking about really any kind of health concern or health optimization area and not talk about hormones. Can you kind of go back for us a little bit and hit on some of those progesterone, estrogen? What are they and what roles do they have, not just in general health, specifically for females still, but why, if they are imbalanced, are they really causing more gut health issues?
Yeah, and I think part of that is because of how water can definitely fluctuate throughout the month. So progesterone, we call that the progestation hormone. So it's actually what begins to peak after ovulation. So it's what would build up the endometrial lining if we were to get pregnant. Progesterone is also great for our mental health as well too. So I actually call progesterone our nature's valium as well because it acts.
All right, spill the beans on that.
Yeah.
How so?
Progesterone actually acts on the same pathways as GABA receptors in the brain. Yeah, so that's where when women actually have progesterone deficiency or they have estrogen dominance, they can struggle a bit too with anxiety or depression, and also helps us sleep at night because GABA receptors and that activation can help us sleep better at night. But progesterone also can cause more water retention. So it's also in that second half of the cycle where women start to notice a lot more bloating around their midsection. And they also start to notice that the motility in their gut begins to slow down because progesterone can also slow down the motility. So our motility is how fast our food moves throughout our gastrointestinal tract. So for some women, this can actually lead to constipation-related issues.
Then to shift gears a little bit into the explanation of maybe why men, I mean, it's definitely, statistically speaking, less than women, but still up to 19% of men suffering with IBS. It's not nothing. What is going on? What's different in the male body compared to the female body that you think is contributing to a fair amount of men still suffering with this gut health issue?
Yeah, so I think for anybody, men and women, a lot of IBS-related symptoms actually come down to microbiome imbalances in the gut. So we have now shown that most cases of IBS actually are due to small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or SIBO, in the gut. So usually it's when the bacteria in our gut become imbalanced, or a lot of our bacteria that are in our large intestine actually move upstream into our small intestine, or bacteria begins to overgrow. This actually can cause a lot of bloating and distension, because as the bacteria are feeding on the foods that we're eating, and especially healthy foods like vegetables, fibers, this will lead to a lot of gas production. And I'd say most people are struggling with some kind of a microbiome imbalance. So SIBO is very common. And if you were to look up the symptoms of IBS, of chronic bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and you were to look up the symptoms of SIBO, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, you'd see they are very similar. So I think most of the time, not all of the time, the root cause of IBS usually comes down to some kind of a microbiome imbalance. Now, it can definitely be due to other things like digestive enzyme insufficiency. So somebody who's not absorbing all of their food, this is going to create a lot of bloating and GI issues. This can be gut inflammation based off of a lot of chronic stress maybe in somebody's life. This can be because they're eating an inflammatory diet that's creating a lot of inflammation in the gut. And then, of course, for women, we know that their hormones can also play a huge role in their gut health. But actually, the bacteria in our gut can also play a role in our estrogen levels too. So
How so?
So the bacteria actually help metabolize our estrogen levels. So if we have an overgrowth of a certain type of bacteria that produces an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, that's really fun to say, beta-glucuronidase.
Yeah, say that 5 times fast.
Say that 5 times. We will actually reabsorb estrogen back into the body. So this is where, for a lot of women or men who actually are struggling with estrogen dominance related symptoms. So guys, this can be, they get a little bit more fat or adipose tissue, especially around the breast area. For women, estrogen dominance can lead to weight gain, heavy menstrual cycles, things like PMS. Part of this is not just the root cause being, okay, my hormones are off. Part of the root cause has to be, okay, my hormones are off. Maybe I have estrogen dominance, but the question is why? And oftentimes it can come back to, we need to heal our gut and address the bacteria.
What's your take on probiotics? Probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, all the biotics.
Yeah, I think probiotics can be great. I think, though, there's a misconception about probiotics that you can just take a probiotic if you're low on a certain type of bacteria, and that's actually going to colonize in your gut. So a lot of times in the functional medicine world, we'll do microbiome tests and we can see, okay, you're low in these probiotics, or you have an overgrowth in these type of bacteria. And so we need to get you on a probiotic, but probiotics don't actually colonize to the gut, but they have these transitory benefits. So they actually work to fight off bad bacteria that have been overgrown. They can actually help with the body's immune system. So just like taking a supplement, they work as they're moving throughout the gastrointestinal tract. So we have the normal strains of probiotics like Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus. This is the most common one. But there's also different types of probiotics like Saccharomyces boulardii. This is a beneficial yeast. This is actually one of my favorite probiotics that we use in my practice. It's incredible for strengthening the gut lining, for fighting off any kind of bacteria overgrowth. So if you are somebody who has SIBO, they've actually shown that combining Saccharomyces boulardii with a low fermentation diet, like the low FODMAP diet, can actually decrease a lot of bacteria overgrowth in the gut. And then the third type of probiotics are more soil-based probiotics. And oftentimes these types of bacteria will produce a spore, and they can survive through the gastrointestinal tract. And there is some research that these type of probiotics can actually colonize to your gastrointestinal tract. Yeah.
That's always good to hear. You can kind of like take something that's not just going to solve a problem, but, really kind of support, what's the word I'm looking for? Internal or innate kind of healing.
The world of probiotics is super fascinating. Now they're coming out with probiotics that work just as effective as the leading SSRIs like Lexapro. So they compared taking these types of psychobiotics compared to an antidepressant, and they've worked just as efficient. So probiotics are great. I'm definitely a huge fan of them.
I just pulled up this new one I've been taking. Have you heard of Akkermansia?
Akkermansia, yeah.
Yeah. That was one of those things until I started taking it. I didn't realize how much I was actually walking around with gut health issues. I don't even know I would say issues, but taking Akkermansia regularly made me feel significantly better to the point of going, oh, I was just walking around not feeling like this before. I never would have thought I had gut health issues. I felt just smoother. I felt
smoother,
less like my stomach.
Yeah, less bloating.
I never would have said that I was someone that had bloating or like distended stomach at all. But definitely taking that, I was like, oh wow, I don't feel as bloated. I didn't even know I was bloated before. It feels like my digestion is easier. I'm a guy, I train fairly good amount. I like to eat. So I feel like I'm always digesting something because I'm always eating. But I was like, oh no, that's not actually the case. I just had something going on with my digestive tract. Yeah,
they've actually shown that Akkermansia too can help with insulin sensitivity and body composition. So that's why it's become quite a bit of a hot take for people to get on Akkermansia probiotics.
What's your take? How would you kind of define or describe differences between postbiotic,
prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics? So prebiotics, pre-bacteria, biotic meaning bacteria. Prebiotic is going to be any kind of a food source that's going to feed bacteria that are already in our gut. So we can actually get prebiotics from our diet. This is going to be all the fibers that we get in. Yeah, so it's going to be like garlic and onion, all of the cruciferous vegetables, which are great, and it helps create more of a diverse microbiome. We can also get prebiotics from polyphenols. So our gut loves polyphenols. Actually, one of the best things that you can do, take as a supplement or get in from food for your gut microbiome, because they act like a prebiotic and they actually increase a lot of the good bacteria in the gut. They're also great for our immune system. And for a lot of people who have gut issues, they don't tolerate a whole lot of prebiotics, right? Because they have bacterial overgrowth. So if you give somebody a lot of fiber, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, Chase, I feel way worse from eating all of these foods. But you can give polyphenols. So polyphenols could be like quercetin, curcumin, and these work great because they don't cause a lot of the bloating and the distension, but they do work more as a prebiotic to feed a lot of the good bacteria to increase diversity. All the brightly colored fruits and vegetables are a great source of polyphenols. And if you think about most of, at least my diet, like back when I was in college, it was like all the creams and the browns, right? The chicken nuggets with the French fries, all the French fries, chicken nuggets, all of that type of food. So those types of foods are, of course, we all know, like not good for gut health, but the more brightly colored your plate can be, probably the better it's going to be for your gut health because of these polyphenols, because that's what gives these fruits and vegetables their bright colors. So prebiotics, fibers, polyphenols, they're going to feed the probiotics that are in our gut. Probiotics we can get through supplementation, like we talked about, but you can also get it from food sources, so sauerkraut, kimchi, miso can all be great sources, though I think a lot of people, though, they're like, oh, fermented foods, so great for my gut health, and then they start to overeat so many of these foods. And probiotics and fermented foods are great, but
baby step it.
Baby steps, like small amounts, because a lot of people will actually feel worse. And I know when I was on my gut healing journey, I was like, all the gut health stuff, because I struggled so much with a lot of my own gut health issues, and it definitely actually exacerbated a lot of my symptoms. So they're good, but you want to start slow, work your way up. And then postbiotics, these are what bacteria produce. as a byproduct when they're metabolizing a lot of these prebiotics. So these are often things like short-chain fatty acids. So when the bacteria metabolize on these fibers, they can produce these types of gases. Butyrate is actually a type of a postbiotic.
And what is butyrate?
Butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid produced from bacteria that is very beneficial because it helps heal and seal the gut lining. It actually also too helps quite a bit with body composition. So they've shown it helps a lot with insulin sensitivity as well. You can actually get butyrate from ghee as well. So 2 teaspoons of ghee or clarified grass-fed butter, you get about 300 milligrams of butyrate. So you can get it from food sources, but when we do microbiome testing with my practice, we'll actually measure the amount of short-chain fatty acids that somebody's producing, butyrate being one of the most common ones that we look at. And we know that a healthy gut has a good amount of short-chain fatty acids being produced and high levels of butyrate.
Well, that concludes our gut masterclass in the first few minutes.
Yeah.
Very well said. Thank you so much for kind of helping shine a light on all those things. And for anyone that's interested, maybe you were talking about your previous, healing journey. I don't have it in front of me. I'm a bad podcaster, but I will link it down in the video notes and show notes for everybody. Your last episode, we really dove into a lot of your personal history.
Yeah.
So not only do you have the professional experience with all this stuff, but it's for a very personal reason. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you went through such a wild journey that the doctors were even recommending removing part of your colon, right?
No, my entire colon. Yeah, they wanted to cut out my entire large intestine because of the motility issues that I was struggling with. And I didn't have Crohn's, ulcerative colitis.
Jeez.
I didn't have, anything where my gut was damaged, but the motility in my gut completely came to a halt. And they just were like, hey, we can cut out the large intestine and that'll fix a lot of the motility and the constipation issues. But, at the time, Western medicine just wasn't talking about
This wasn't that long ago. What, like 10 years maybe?
Not even
Not
10
even?
years.
Like, come on.
Yeah, not even
Do better,
10
healthcare.
years.
Do better.
I mean, maybe like 8 years ago or so. So close to 10 years
Jeez.
ago. But yeah, Western medicine had yet to really discover the power of the gut microbiome and how the bacteria just play a role in our overall health. SIBO was really at the early stages of what was being talked about, IBS. Really the treatment was colonoscopy, endoscopy, CT scan.
Yeah.
If everything comes back normal, we're just going to give you that label of IBS and work on managing your symptoms. And I think we've come now so far with the research on the gut microbiome and how the bacteria play a role in not just our gut health and the motility in our gut, but literally all of these systems in the body, like we talked about, hormones. Plays a huge role in estrogen levels, can play a role in testosterone levels, it can play a role in our thyroid levels, and our mental health, brain health. All of this can go back to the gut.
I want to save that for later. I got some things I want to dive into with that. So I'm glad we're all on the same page here. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about how a lot of your work is talking about whole body healing through whole body system work. You can look at compartmentalized silo one area of your health, one system in your body, because it might need it. Your gut health needs focus, your endocrine system needs focus, your whatever needs focus. But then you need to be mindful that it's part of a much larger system, particularly looking at the nervous system. That connects, that's the through line for everything. And direct quote from one of your previous pieces of content is that you can't heal the body without healing the nervous system. Is it all due to chronically elevated cortisol?
I think nervous system dysregulation can be a byproduct of many different things. Definitely chronic stress plays a huge role where the body gets stuck really living in this sympathetic dominant state. But it also can be a byproduct of other things that are off. So when our gut microbiome is off, we've seen it when somebody has, a level of adrenal imbalances. We can see the nervous system get off due to toxin buildup, so like mycotoxins, mold, heavy metals. So there's other things in the body that can definitely influence the nervous system.
So we don't have to, sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify something real quick, we don't have to be living in typical perceived high stress to have high cortisol. due to other things going on in our bodies can be increasing cortisol. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct, because there's many different types of stressors on the body. There's definitely the emotional stressors, chronic stress in our day-to-day life. Emotional stress can also be unaddressed trauma, where the body actually stress threshold becomes narrowed and the body is more in a reactive place. Like, think about people who struggle with PTSD. Their nervous system, based off of trauma that they've walked through, is always on high guard and high alert, not necessarily because they're struggling with a lot of chronic stress in their life, but because the body holds on to so many of these pains and traumas that we walk through. So it can be emotional stress, it can be dietary stress. So blood sugar imbalances, right? So for somebody whose diet is full of a lot of processed sugar, carbohydrates, they're not getting enough protein, cortisol, it's a glucocorticoid. So when our blood sugar levels spike and then drop rapidly soon after, and our blood sugar gets too low, cortisol actually picks up. So most people are living in this blood sugar roller coaster all day long, where their nervous system is constantly getting upregulated. Think about a time where you got really hangry and you hadn't eaten. How did your nervous system feel?
Scientifically speaking, out of whack.
Right?
Very out of whack.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
people's diet can play a huge role in our cortisol levels. For even people who are overtraining, who are under eating, the nervous system is definitely going to operate more in an upregulated state because it is a stressor on the body. We could say it's a physical stressor, it's a dietary stressor, just because we're not getting in enough nutrition. And then there can be the environmental stressors too. So this is where I mentioned like mold, heavy metals that are in the body, and how that can interfere with the nervous system.
Can you walk us through some maybe possible ways mold might be coming into our life and increasing cortisol and causing multiple system disruptions? What does that look like? What are some things maybe somebody can look out for, whether that's in their environment or just maybe even qualitatively how they feel?
Yeah, actually we can eat a good amount of mold. Most coffees actually are pretty high in mold. I know, right?
All right, shameless plug, not Strong Coffee Company.
Most coffee is very high in mycotoxins.
Especially if it's not
mold.
organic. Yeah,
Especially if
organic's
it's not
definitely.
organic.
Coffee is one area I always push. You got to go organic because it's mold, chemicals, herbicides, pesticides. It's the most widely unregulated product because it's globally sourced.
Those K-cups like you're drinking full of natural flavors. I did so much of those.
We've all been there.
up.
The convenience age of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked. But I'm glad you bring that up.
Yeah, peanuts. So peanuts are actually a huge source of mold because peanuts are actually not a nut. It's not a tree nut.
It's a legume,
It's
right?
a legume.
Yeah.
They grow from the ground. So they actually have quite a bit of mold, which I love. I love peanut butter. But it's also found in different kind of like dried fruits. That can be a source of mold as well too. And then there's environmental molds, right? So you're living in a home that's maybe pretty old and there's been some kind of water damage. And in my opinion, that's the worst type of mold, and how that can really impact our immune system, our gut health. And a lot of these toxins, they actually cross through our blood-brain barrier. Oof. And it leads to a lot of neuroinflammation. So a lot of people who are struggling with mold toxicity or even heavy metal toxicity, they're struggling usually with quite a bit of mental health issues as well.
And I hear a lot of that brain fog. I think a lot of people reverse engineer once they kind of get to, mold was a huge contributing factor to what I'm going through in my health, if not the contributing factor. The biggest telltale sign was brain fog, like unexplicable brain fog.
And a lot of these toxins can create the onset of an autoimmune condition, right? So in my practice, we'll work with a lot of people who have Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, different types of autoimmune conditions. And looking at the root causes of the development of an autoimmune condition, genetics can definitely play a bit of a role, but I would attribute genetics to only be about 30% of autoimmune conditions. So I mean,
not nothing.
It's not nothing for
yeah.
sure. And a big part of that usually comes back to methylation status. So people who have COMT defects or have MTHFR defects where it affects their body's ability to methylate can predispose them more with autoimmune conditions. But 70% comes back to environmental related reasons for the development of an autoimmune condition. So these are environmental toxins, This is actually the gut, because when our gut lining becomes broken down, so leaky gut, we start to get bacteria, foods, and toxins leaking into the bloodstream, stimulating a massive immune and inflammatory response. And if left unaddressed over
my home, like where would you recommend someone go first to begin their detective work with possible mold?
Yeah, in functional medicine, we can order mycotoxin tests, which is going to look at.
So running diagnostic labs.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's going to be a urine test. We'll test for mold through the urine to see the levels of mycotoxins through different food sources. Like there's so many different types of mycotoxins, so we're not just testing for mold, period.
Okay.
But honestly, most of the time, people are going to come back with them. Like I even ran the test on myself. I had a bit of some mycotoxins.
So most people are running around with mold?
I'd say most people are, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think, though, what we have to look at is how much toxins are people running around with. It's not a question on, do you have toxins
Right.
in your body? It's a question of how much. And I think it gets to this point where it gets over this threshold where then we start to create or have symptoms
Problems,
that
yeah.
begin to appear, right? And so if you're someone who's definitely symptomatic and you're struggling with gut issues or mental health issues or an autoimmune condition, I would say, yes, 100%, you should do an environmental toxin test to look at how much, not if, but how much toxins you have in your body that could be contributing to a lot of your health issues. But if you're somebody who's like, I just want to know, great.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we can still work on bringing those levels down. So testing, and then, the second part of that is we have to remove exposure. So if you do come back, you want to get your home tested for mold, you want to probably do some kind of a mold-free or a limited mold diet to try to remove the sources as much as possible.
All right. So if not mold, some other reasons why maybe our nervous system might be running high. What are some other contributing factors to chronically elevated cortisol levels beyond the obvious? I think we can kind of skip past the, you're burning the midnight oil, you're working so much, your family life, professional life, maybe you're not prioritizing recovery, all those kind of, I'll say, more obvious surface level things to high stress, high cortisol.
Yeah. One of the areas I really like to talk about the most is the high achievers, the perfectionists, the type A personalities. And, it's not a coincidence that most people who are struggling with gut issues usually are, these type of personality types. And I think if we think about it, high achievers, they put such an incredible amount of pressure on themselves that is very often tied to their own sense of worth. This can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and a upregulation of the nervous system at the core. And this was actually a huge part of my root cause. When I really peeled back the onion of like, why do I have a lot of these gut issues? Okay, I have SIBO, I have dysbiosis, I have a lot of these imbalances. It wasn't just what is the root cause here, but what is the root cause of the root cause? And so much of a lot of my health issues were really stemming from the ways in which I was relating to myself. So a lot of my healing journey had to really go into doing a lot of the inner work and really addressing the ways in which I was viewing myself. And it makes sense, right, that when we're constantly trying to live up to the expectations of what the world demands, we're trying to be perfect, that, the nervous system is going to get so upregulated because we're not authentically in our sense of being when we're operating from that place. I think at the core, when the nervous system is really upregulated, we're not really fully ourself. We're not operating from a place of authenticity, because being ourself is really when we are fully present in all of life. And it's like when we put so much of our sense of worth in these things that are outside of us, at the core, we lose a sense of ourself. And that's why healing, I believe, is really a return back to self at the core of everything that we do. And I think a big part of this is when, we have conditioning based off of societal imprints, relationships, traumas that we've walked through in our life. This actually,
I feel like you kind of had like a little bit of an energy shift there. I feel like talking about this stuff is something coming up for you personally, and kind of describing inauthentic living and just the stressors that inevitably kind of produces for us.
Yeah, it's definitely very close to home for me. I think that was a big part of my entire healing journey.
Yeah.
At the core is part of healing the nervous system was really healing the relationship with self. It was a big part of a lot of the inner work that I had to do. And I think when, the perceived need to be what the world demands gets entangled with who we are, often we choose attachment over authenticity in a lot of ways. And so what happens is the body develops these defense mechanisms, right? Where it begins to close itself off.
Is that what happened to you? Or was that your experience?
Yeah, as I really began to do a lot of the inner work, that was really the core of what was really stemming from. I think so much of my own sense of worth was stemming from these things that were outside of me. And so a lot of my inner work had to be really working on the views that I had of myself and where that was stemming from. And, I think when we're younger and we have these traumas that we walk through, essentially, when we're met with some kind of judgment or rejection, the body learns that it's not safe to be who we are at the core. And, looking at the nervous system, we tend to think of just physical safety, right? And the nervous system only knows two pathways. To talking about high achievers, perfectionists, type A people, this is really the core of so many of our wounds. It's really this part of us. And so, we can do a lot of different things to ground our nervous system. We can do the meditation, we can do a lot of that, which I've done all of that. But unless we really heal the relationship with self, the view of self, we're still going to be running in circles. Yeah. And I had the huge wake up moment where I was like, fuck, I've been living actually, and I didn't realize it. I wasn't like trying to be fake in different ways, but I've been really contracting and closing myself off and not really being fully all of Rachel and everything out of fear of judgment and rejection. And this is what led to so much of my nervous system dysregulation issues, and which ultimately led me to pushing my body to such an extreme point where it led to all of these gut issues, all of the hyperachievement.
It's like no wonder.
We can really trace it back to this, but it's such a beautiful thing as when you can step boldly into that part of you and to let the world see it. You know what? It's probably going to make a lot of people really fucking uncomfortable too.
Hell, it makes me uncomfortable. But, being committed to the process and having such immense progress thus far and getting closer and closer and closer to authenticity, I really know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And
it's powerful, right?
Love it.
It's expansive, and it's like that place where that the fear can be there. Like the fear is there. And that's why I totally understand. You're like, well, okay, how am I stepping forward into a more authentic and fully embodied, expansive version of me? And there's so much fear there. Like there's so much
How can I be growing but breaking down all along the way?
Because you're stepping into the unknown, right? And that's what it's really all about. And I think that's what is so powerful. And I think so many of us live in our comfort zone of what is safe, and we're not trying to step on anybody's toes, and we want to be liked, and we all want to be received, and we live our entire life living in this box, right? And we never really fully get to experience all of life because when we're constantly, living in this inauthentic version of ourselves, we don't fully get to experience all of who we are. And I think, the authentic self at the core, like its origin is truly infinite presence where love is at its highest vibration.
Yeah.
So as you are stepping so boldly into your most authentic self, you are also saying yes to so much more love in your life, and any amount of, accolades, achievements, and things that we get when we are not really fully all of ourselves, it's never really going to feel like it's ours. And the people who do love us, we're not going to even be able to fully receive it because we're not really fully all of ourselves. So it's like, even if I'm all of myself and it's probably not going to be received by some people, you know what? Great. Because then I know that those aren't my people. But the people who do receive all of me, all of who I am, I know those are my people. And that's what is so powerful. But I think exactly what you're talking about is that fear and that anxiety as you're stepping into that version of you is why most people stay stuck.
Well, I didn't know this was going to turn into a billable hour for my therapy, but I'll take it. Thank you so much.
I love these conversations.
But, that kind of personal story sidestep does bring me back to a point I wanted to make about as we're navigating gut health, high stress, back to, regulating our nervous system.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we can try. We've talked about quite a few of them, but I think it's such a unique area, kind of going back to a recommendation by my therapist, of when we do try something, like that's great. Whatever we can do is great. Whatever we can test and evaluate and try, like we should do that. We should be a study of one, and we should really try to figure stuff out. And we should stay committed to getting better, right? Moving ever forward. But sometimes there could be a better way to try things out. What I mean by that is, so I've been back in my meditation game for a while.
I remember when you started.
Yeah, and I'm loving it. I'm so glad.
I'm like, you're just starting meditation?
I know. I'm so late to the party on this, and I love it. But what I've been doing is, I'll meditate in the mornings 4 days a week at least. And it's typically I wake up, drink some water, I'm meditating within the first 15 minutes of being awake. And I thought this was great. And again, I think it is. Adherence, whatever you can do is great. But my therapist was like, I don't think that's the best time for you, at least in this state where I'm having PTSD triggers, I'm having panic attacks, like all the time. It's like, what if we've recognized that, hey, those first waking moments in the morning, that's actually when your cortisol naturally baseline is already at its peak. That's when it's got to wake up your organ system, your body. That's, what gets you up and moving. So you already having high stress, high cortisol, you're going through all these things on top of just baseline. That's not the best time to try to be slowing down, dropping in, meditating. So she recommended I actually wake up, do my thing, do my morning routine, take the dog out, take a walk, kind of like allow that natural morning cortisol spike to kind of go through its process. And then, hour-ish, maybe later, kind of come back and try meditating. What's your take on that? Is there a kind of preferred protocol when we're looking at natural cortisol peak time in the body to try to do something to support regulating our nervous system?
That's the first time I've heard that, but curious, has it helped?
I haven't tried it yet. I had my therapy session yesterday, and I did meditate this morning, but I forgot. I forgot to change it up, like she mentioned.
Do you have a very sensitive nervous system, like where you feel like you pick up on other people's energy also very easily?
I wouldn't say very easily, but I'd say a little bit more than average.
Yeah. I've noticed that about myself. Like it's a gift in so many different ways because I can like connect with people, very intimately, but I also feel like I pick up on other people's energy. But my body can very easily go into a hyper-aroused state, a heightened nervous system response. And I think there's the point where a little bit of a heightened nervous system response can actually be beneficial. It's powerful. It's like full body arousal.
Yeah.
And that's actually, in my opinion, an incredible place to be. And in my morning routines, I actually take it, a whole lot of benefit in that. And I use that to my advantage. So I love meditating every single morning. It's
in that kind of heightened full body arousal state.
Yeah. And I'll actually notice my nervous system start to slowly build up during my meditation. And actually, even this morning, I was doing a meditation and I noticed my body just get to this point of like full bliss and ecstasy of what I was experiencing. Now, I think if you don't know how to really control it, and if your thoughts really shift to maybe a place like PTSD where you don't want it to go, I think that can be incredibly overwhelming. But I've learned that if I can really like harness and tune in with my body and stay present with it all, like it's actually such a powerful energy. And then I take that energy and I bring it into my day. Now I have to be very careful because I can almost kind of lean over a little bit too far. And then it almost feels like that anxiety. Like if I add in stimulants in the morning. So I actually quit coffee. I know we talked about coffee.
You quit coffee?
I quit
You didn't
coffee.
just postpone it?
No, I quit coffee last October because of my nervous system. And it's like one of those things that was just sending my nervous system a little bit over the edge. And I like to have like my coffee like right when I wake up. So I was like meditating, I was doing my coffee, and I just was noticing like a bit more anxiety. And then I pulled out coffee and it completely got rid of all of my like upregulation.
So really
of my
what we're talking about there
system.
is you quit caffeine.
No, because I still do matcha green tea and like I do cacao, but I quit coffee because I didn't notice that coffee had the same effect.
Really?
As intensely. Like I still will get the caffeine and the buzz, but I don't get like this massive hit.
So particularly caffeine
on.
from coffee was giving you this disruption.
Correct. I can do matcha green tea, which has a little bit less caffeine. It's still very caffeinated.
But it also has naturally occurring L-theanine and some other amino acids.
Yeah, and I'll notice that it'll be a little bit more of a stable energy for me. I'll still get that rise, but I won't get that massive spike and drop. It'll send me too far over.
All right, I'm going to go back and shout out again, Strong Coffee Company. Have you ever heard of them? Do you know them?
I love coffee. And I do love Strong Coffee.
The brand,
too.
okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried that? Do you get the same thing with Strong Coffee?
Theirs is the one that has the like things mixed in it, right?
I'm their
L-theanine?
biggest spokesperson. This is not a paid endorsement. I love Adam and the whole family and crew. I've been drinking Strong Coffee 4 to 5 days a week for the past 6 years. It's instant organic coffee, so organic. It has L-theanine, hyaluronic acid, MCTs, coconut water extract, and depending on which one you get, it can have adaptogens, functional mushrooms. So no crash, no jitters, smooth sailing.
Sounded
all that.
like a amazing ad.
I have some here. I keep it in the studio. You're getting some with you when you
Okay.
leave. Try it.
Okay.
No, she's gonna be like,
I love
Chase,
my
I hate
matcha,
you.
though.
You ruined my nervous system. I was doing so well before you.
It's a polyphenol. I love my matcha so much. So I'll do that like in the morning time. But, to answer your question though about like what your therapist said,
Right, like kind of like fine tuning and optimizing that protocol. My whole point here is to kind of highlight that we can be doing something and that's great, but there might be just a better way to do it dependent on our symptoms and what we're going through.
I also believe too in just like bio-individuality. And I know there's been like times in my life where like I could lean into certain practices much easier. And there's times where like I couldn't, there's times where, I could do intermittent fasting, but then there was a point where just based off of a lot of other stressors in my life, as I did intermittent fasting, it led to a lot of the nervous system imbalances because of the glucocorticoid response, right? So I think we just need to be cognizant of like, okay, what are all of my stressors that are happening in my life? But I mean, it's an interesting theory though about like if you postpone it, it makes sense though. Looking at the circadian rhythm where we get that cortisol spike in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd be curious though if you kind of really leaned into it, because I also think too it's like if you get that kind of rise during the meditation, like I like to harness that as power.
Yeah.
It's like a very powerful energy, and if I can really feel it fully in my body and I can like feel that and turn it into like action and manifestation in my life, it feels like a very powerful, potent energy during my meditation.
Yeah.
But I think if it can create that level of overwhelm, then I think that's maybe where it may not be beneficial, but also depends on the type of meditation that you're doing. Like a lot of my meditations are like visualization type meditations.
Are they like guided and you actually have like a process for it?
Yeah.
Other than just dropping in?
I've done different types. I mean, I've done the meditations where just like it's pure silence and I'm just like sitting with myself. And I do agree, typically midday, I'm able to do those a lot easier where it's just like perfectly quiet versus in the morning. But a lot of time my morning meditations, they're more focused. They're going to be more so like focusing on gratitude, things in my life, and then taking that energy of like love and gratitude and shifting my focus into what I want to create in my life. Yeah. So it's like memories of my past, memories of my future. The one I did this morning, it was a loving kindness meditation. So it's like picturing, this white light in your heart and you're just feeling and all of the love and it just like growing and expanding and filling your body. And then you're taking that love and that bliss and all of that energy and you're pouring it outward to people in your life, your close circle, and then you're going from your close circle to people you don't know and to the whole world, and you're extending it out.
I've done that a few times.
And that's where it's like when you can feel that energy and that love and that bliss, which probably is also a little bit of a cortisol spike too. Like it's powerful. So maybe it kind of depends on to the type of meditations that you're doing. Yeah,
it's an interesting approach, right? And it's just kind of a reminder of
you'll have to keep me updated.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do things, but for right now, there might be a better way to do it.
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
What are maybe some other signs that we are chronically stressed and might not realize it? Particularly, I want to talk about maybe particular biomarkers, biometrics, feedback, things like maybe on a wearable that we can get, heart rate, HRV, biomarkers and biometrics. What maybe would you recommend us to look at to be possible indicators that we are chronically stressed out, i.e. heightened cortisol, and might not fully realize it?
Yeah, I do like HRV testing. I think it can be great. So heart rate variability, because when we're under a lot of chronic stress, the heart rate variability gets decreased. So I love a lot of those wearables. Sleep can definitely be impacted. So a lot of like the Oura rings and the Whoops that will measure someone's sleep pattern. We'll often notice a lot of sleep inconsistency, where maybe we'll see a bit of a decline there. Lab testing too, often when there's a lot of chronic stress, we'll see thyroid begin to slow down. Most hypothyroidism is a secondary condition, and it makes sense because when the body's under a lot of chronic stress, it could be any of these type of stressors, it could be emotional stress, it could be physical stress like overtraining. There's a feedback loop where it begins to slow down your thyroid. It's going to make you colder. It's going to actually slow down your metabolism as a byproduct. And this is a bit more of a protective mechanism that your body does as a response to stress. We see hormones begin to slow down. So testosterone can decrease, progesterone levels can decrease.
Men and women.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, more so the testosterone, for men. We'll usually see an increase, like I said, in cortisol. So we can see that sometimes in blood work. We may do a 24-hour cortisol test. So, often with Western medicine, they'll test cortisol just like first thing in the morning.
Get a snapshot,
Yeah, but we can test cortisol throughout the day and actually see is cortisol chronically elevated. Or even for some people, we may see low cortisol, which is usually the byproduct of cortisol being chronically high for an extended period of time, where we actually enter into that phase of burnout.
Relatively new for me, that concept, but as soon as I read it, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. We run so chronically high with cortisol and high stress that we kind of reach a point of diminishing return to where our body will then stop or slow down significantly the production of cortisol. And then that causes just a myriad of other effects.
That's burnout at the core of what is happening.
But you're so stressed out, you stop producing the hormone that causes stress, but yet you're still stressed out. How does that make sense?
Wired and tired, right? So you can think about like the first stage of chronic stress, which is where you're entering into stress, but your body's able to kind of come back out of it. This is most people's normal stress response. There's stressful things that happen, and then I can reground myself. Versus the second stage is where cortisol becomes chronically elevated. We also see DHEA levels, which is also produced from the adrenal glands, begin to increase as a byproduct. And this is where often we'll see that heightened nervous system response. We'll have a lot more anxiety. And then over time, though, when cortisol is chronically elevated, it then begins to deplete a bit of the adrenal glands. So we'll start to see cortisol decrease, DHEA levels decrease, where now it's more of this like fatigue type feeling. So it's like this, I'm wired, but I'm also tired simultaneously.
Yeah.
This is burnout. And also, if you think about it too, like burnout in terms of the nervous system, it's like when we've been living in this sympathetic state for so long, the body also needs to bring us into the parasympathetic states for a period of time. And this is really what burnout is doing. And it's going to do that by making you sick. We're going to impact your immune system. We're going to begin to slow everything down. Thyroid begins to slow down. That's going to make you more tired. Like all of these are just protective mechanisms that are happening in the body to try to help you survive. Your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do in order to help and to protect you. So that's why we can't just throw a bunch of supplements. Like I'm a big fan of adaptogens. So you're under chronic stress, you can do things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, high dose vitamin C can be great for supporting the adrenals. But at the end of the day, if we don't get to the root cause of the root cause, as I said earlier, we're not going to actually truly heal. And it always comes back to, our lifestyle. It comes back to the relationship with self. It comes back to all of these things. If you even look at someone's diet and the foods that they're putting in their body, we can also probably bring that back to the relationship with self, their view that they have of themselves.
Actually, there was another prompt by my therapist to kind of look at recommending some key supplementation outside of what I normally do and meditation practices and all the things to slow down. She's like, I'm at this point, I've been going through this now for like 5 months, pushing 6 months. And she's like, and I'm getting to the point now being worried about your adrenals. You're putting such a tax chronically. You might want to look at, getting something to support what you're going through on top of everything else.
And they can be great to help support, right? We just can't think that the supplements without any other shifts in our life are going to fix it. But I'm a huge fan of adrenal support, can definitely help protect it, from, decreasing too low. It can definitely help keep your cortisol levels a bit more stable. Yeah. I think there's also the compounding effect over time. And I've known this to be true for myself, where it's like I went and grinded so hard in my business for like 6 years and built everything. I chased my dreams and all of that. And then now, like, I'll incorporate a lot more like meditation and like the parasympathetic type activities, building resilience, but also too, like I'm a lot more sensitive to a lot of the stressors. And I've realized like what my body has been craving for so much is more rest and play. And it's like, I'll be like, all right, we did like the meditation, we did some of these little things, but it's like my body has actually been asking like, can we like slow down a bit? Can we actually incorporate more play and rest? And I think that's also an area of health that we don't talk about a whole lot. And, we can talk about macros and nutrition and we can talk about mindset, which I love all of those topics. That's like what I first got started in. And I love all of those things because I can muscle my way through it. Right? If you give me a diet, you give me a workout, I can muscle my way through it. You just
head down, do the thing.
Head down, do it. Discipline has never been a problem for me. What has always been the struggle has been actually the slowing down, incorporating more play and incorporating more rest. And so that has really been like the second area of health I'm really been focusing on. And actually a quote I've said before is, sometimes it's not that we're burnt out on doing too much, but too little of the things that really feed our soul and make us feel alive. Ooh. And for me now, I can be grinding, in my work, but if I don't have play and I don't have a lot of the things that feed my soul and really help me live more heart open, I go straight into burnout like real fast, but I can still do a lot of these things that I love and chase my dreams. And I think that's the fear for a lot of these high achievers, right? Is I have to give it all up because, it's impacting my health, which yes, it is impacting our health. But I don't think it's that we have to give up our dreams though, but I think it is learning to go in and out. And I've had to really learn the stance of I can lean more into this sympathetic state of like chasing my dreams and going after it. But I also need to lean into this other side where it's a bit more flowy and it's a bit more playful and it's a bit more heart-centric. And I need to have more of that in my life. And it's like this balance between the two has really been, what I've learned is essential for our health.
Essential is such an understatement. I mean, even to the point I'll say, I think it should be periodized just like we do anything else. Look at periodization in your training. You put in key blocks and you cycle through and you go through, baseline, you go through PRs, maybe same thing in nutrition, but where is that in our rest and digest? Where is that in our downtime? Where is that in our, I purposely blocked 2 hours to do nothing, let myself just chill, take a walk, get connected to nature. Leave white space for creativity.
Play, dance,
yeah, exactly.
turn on music. I used to not allow myself to do that. And that's such an interesting conversation that we even have to have that. But I think that's like the culture and society that like we're now in right now, where it's like the hustle culture. And again, I love, I at the core entrepreneur, love chasing my dreams, going after all of that, not against it. I'm not that like anti-hustle culture person.
Of course,
but I think I've just realized like there's so much more to life and health, and it's really about living this like heart open life and play and relationships, and that's like what my soul has just so been craving for.
Well, get out there and get some, girl.
Yeah.
Kind of getting towards the end here, I want to shine a light on another area of your work and expertise, and that's kind of around the functional medicine aspect. When we're feeling some kind of way, or we're not, we just want to get different labs. We want to take a different kind of snapshot internally to really know what's going on or what's not going on. But particularly when we feel normal or when we don't. I think some people will go through functional medicine testing or get labs because they feel some kind of way and they're like, I don't feel this great. I want to optimize something.
Yeah.
Or you think you feel fine, but then you get a lab and something comes back and it's like, oh, hey, actually we do have something to work on. Can you walk us through, I'm not feeling great, and I won't get too specific, but just, what would be the benefit of getting functional labs for someone that is just feeling like their health is not generally optimized? And then someone who, I think I feel fine, but then, why should I get functional labs to maybe kind of look at something that could be underlying that I can't always necessarily feel?
Yeah. I'd say the majority of the people who come to our practice, it's usually because they're suffering in some way or shape or form in their life. For someone to say like, okay, enough is enough. Like I'm willing to go seek answers. I'm willing to invest. Like usually we have to have most of the time, like a big pain point in order to do that. But every now and then, like we do get the people who are just like, they want to know everything about themselves and maybe they feel okay. They don't feel like anything is necessarily wrong, but they really want to focus on optimization at the core, which in functional medicine, we can not have symptoms, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're healthy, right? And actually a quote that I've used before, health is not just the absence of disease, but it's the presence of optimal feeling and function. So if we're just looking at health in terms of I'm not sick, I'm not symptomatic, we're still missing an entire other piece of the equation. So this is where, we will get people every now and then who are like, all right, I want to do the testing. I want to look at my gut microbiome, my hormones, my thyroid. I want to do the micronutrient testing and the toxin testing. And these people will always come back with things that are off. And I think that's what's cool about functional medicine testing. Yeah. I mean, we're looking at like the entire body at the core, like Western medicine is usually just doing basic lab testing, CBC, maybe a basic metabolic panel. They're usually not going to even be running insulin levels. They may do a fasting glucose. They'll do A1C.
Most won't even run testosterone, especially
they won't even run testosterone.
Even if you ask for it.
They're running a partial thyroid test. They're not looking at free T3 levels. And they're also looking at this reference range where we're not looking at optimal levels. Like we're actually looking at these ranges that have been collected from other people who have been going to the doctor who have been sick. So we're looking at those reference ranges versus with functional medicine, when we're testing everything and we're looking at how everything's interconnected, usually everybody's going to have something that's off, because I've never met anybody who's perfect. Someone may have something off with their gut. maybe something with hormones, thyroid deficiencies that they may have. Like I said, everybody has some toxins in their body.
What do you think are maybe some most common things that are off in a functional medicine or a more comprehensive lab panel where the person doesn't think anything's wrong?
Gut microbiome
Gut
test.
microbiome, really?
For sure. Yeah. I'd say most people have low diversity in their gut. I'd say about 8 out of 10 people have
Really?
that. I'd say most people have some degree of dysbiosis of bacteria imbalances in their gut. So we can optimize gut health a bit further, optimize nutrition. Most people have a deficiency in omega-3 fatty acids.
I can believe that, absolutely.
Yes, most people do.
Yeah.
Have some type of micronutrient deficiencies unless they're just eating the most bioavailable food and they're eating like all of the diverse amounts of fruits and vegetables, but most of the time, like people aren't. Most people are going to come back with a certain level of a toxin load. And then, every now and then you'll get people who maybe there's some things that are off with their hormones, or maybe that's not necessarily off, but it could be optimized. It could be a bit better, right? And I also think we need to look at trends over time. So like if you're a guy who used to have, 800 testosterone, and then now you're at 500, where below the reference range of Western medicine is 300. They're like, hey, you're totally fine. But they're like, no, I feel tired. Well, I used to be at 700 or 800 and now I'm at 500. It's like that shift and change over time. It makes sense as to why that person's going to be fatigued. So could there be some optimization there? Definitely, for sure. But for a guy who's maybe, his reference has been at 500 his entire life, and, the reference range is 300, he may be actually pretty okay. So we also need to look at somebody's trend history over time.
So the numbers on the labs are not always the only thing to really go off of in terms of making changes or health or not health.
Yeah. I mean, I like to treat the person at the core. Like we need to look at the person and what their goals are, and if they do have symptoms, and be able to tie it into that. And I think that's what's so unfortunate is so many people will go to Western medicine. They'll be like, I know there's something that's off. Women in particular, like they're definitely overlooked. They're like, I know there's something that's off with my hormones. I'm fatigued all the time. I'm tired. It's a lot of these people who are struggling with chronic health issues. They'll run the basic tests and they'll come back and they'll be like, hey, you're the picture perfect of health. Everything's normal. And then, these people leave and they're like, okay, I'm crazy. It's just all in my head. I guess have to live with this my entire life. And then they come to us and we run all the tests and we're like, well, you got a lot going on. And they're like, well, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful because they're like, I'll actually have women who will start to cry on some of our lab reviews. And they're like, I'm like, what's
finally,
coming up?
I have something to work off of.
They're like, I just felt like I was crazy. I felt like it was all in my head. And like, they don't even care that. I'm like, there's a lot that we need to work with here. They're like, I'm just so glad that I'm
glad
answers.
There's something.
Yeah.
Optimization. We've said that quite a few times. And I feel like that is a word being used a lot right now. How do you define optimization? And are there obvious markers, ranges, thresholds for optimization, especially when we're looking at, labs? It's any lab range will say, on par, below, or above. But optimization, is there an actual way to quantify that, or is it just better than typical?
Yeah. So not average, not where most people are at. And I think too, like so many things now today, it's common and we attribute it to be normal, but just because something is common, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily normal. And so we look at these baselines where somebody maybe isn't sick, like I said, but it doesn't mean that they probably are feeling the best that they could. Kind of like the example with testosterone, where a guy may have a level of 400 testosterone, 500 testosterone, but could he feel better? Could he have better energy levels, better libido? Could he maintain more skeletal muscle at a higher level of testosterone? Probably. Right? So optimization would really focus on getting the levels to a point where we're going to have optimal feeling and function versus just a baseline of not sick.
Speaking of guys, and June is National Men's Health Awareness Month, and I would love to get your take on what is maybe one area of, majority speaking, men's health that you would recommend a guy to really look at for optimization and just key awareness right now.
Men's health and optimization. I do think, though, we are in an epidemic of low testosterone, like quite a bit with men. And I think for a lot of men who go to the standard physician's office, like the reference ranges are not great that they're looking at. So I do think hormonal health is huge for men overall. I also am a big believer in like gut health for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think that plays such a huge role. I also think just overall, I'd say adrenal health plays such a huge role. So it's also when we're looking at testosterone levels, you know, and let's say they're low, functional medicine, we want to look a bit more further at like what is the root cause. So this is where we don't want to just test that. We want to look at, okay, what is really happening with inflammation levels? You know, what is really happening with the adrenals? What is happening with, you know, toxin load? All of these things can play a big role in a man's testosterone levels.
Yeah, I think the last kind of stats I heard was this current generation, you know, most men now are running about 50 to high, maybe even 60% less testosterone than the generation before. They've lowered the
ranges over time too.
Come on,
so the ranges used to be a much higher because the average men testosterone ranges were higher. So they actually have lowered the reference ranges. I can't tell you exactly what they were, but now like the baseline is lower because now this is the normal. And so they're basing it off of what is common. But again, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And it definitely doesn't mean that it's optimal.
I think another area a lot of guys look to when they think men's health is, you know, they get really focused on libido. And I think most men equate libido to testosterone and like, oh, if I have low libido, it's because low testosterone. If I have high libido, it must be high testosterone. Is there a correlation, direct correlation there, and I guess even causation with libido and testosterone?
Yeah. So it's like, is more testosterone necessarily better? Like there's definitely that point of no return. It's just like everything in life. Like 1 coffee, great. 2 coffee, great. 3 coffee, not so great.
1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila.
Yeah, the not so great. And I've seen this, you know, with a lot of men. I think they're the ones who are like, oh, more testosterone, the better. And then this is where we start to see a lot of negative downstream effects, especially if you're a guy. Let's say you're taking testosterone, because most of the time, a guy's natural testosterone is not going to probably be well above the upper limit naturally. Let's be real there. So if I see a guy's like in the 2000 range, right, and you'll see that 1000, 2000. Yeah, I've seen that before in my practice of guys and what they're
naturally
running. No, not naturally.
Okay,
no,
I was like,
no,
come on,
not
no.
naturally. So right, if you're supplementing, you know, and I'm all for bioidentical replacement therapy. I think it's great. I think it can be great for men. I think it can be great for women. But it's like the point of no return where we think more is actually going to lead to more muscle. And that's actually not true. Like there's the point where it doesn't actually help you build that much more muscle, but men will start to see negative side effects, a loss of hair, right? Because a lot of the testosterone then begins to convert into dihydroxytestosterone, which is a more potent androgen. DHT will lead to acne. It'll lead to the hair loss. So this is where the guys will start to get a lot of the bacne, the facial acne quite a bit. Aggression, right? A lot of more like that type of mood can be pretty common. So this is where I think like the overly heightened libido isn't necessarily a good thing, may not be most ideal for your relationship.
Yeah, they're like, no, I want it. And they're like, no, you don't.
Yeah. Cholesterol metabolic panels also get really negatively impacted. So it can also lead to an increase of iron levels, so a thickening of the blood. So a lot of guys who are on testosterone actually usually every so often need to go and donate blood, right, some blood every now and then because...
And increase those omega-3s and things like that, yeah.
The iron is neurotoxic as well. So a lot of these guys will notice a lot of like neurological issues, brain fog too, when these levels get really high, can put them at risk for, you know, atherosclerosis, other cardiovascular issues, especially if you're a guy and you want to have kids. You know, this can, of course,
fertility.
Impact that.
Absolutely. Can you quickly kind of highlight the need to be at least aware of possible fertility issues when it comes to focusing on increasing testosterone, especially supplementing with exogenous testosterone for guys?
Yeah. I mean, doing natural things to increase your own testosterone levels, great. Awesome. Resistance training, supplementation, you know, all of these things can be very beneficial, but it's not actually taking exogenous testosterone. So when we take exogenous testosterone, our body decreases and stops producing our own levels of it. So over time, for a lot of men, this can lead to fertility issues.
Now, is that reversible if you get off of it, or can you kind of do other things while still taking it?
It can be reversible for some, but I think it also depends on like how long you've been taking it, and then how much, everything has really been negatively impacted over time. And I also think this is why, so many people are having to do a lot of fertility treatments as well.
To get to the end, before I ask my last question, what is one thing you would love to leave the audience with right here, right now, to just walk away with that they can try, they can test, they can ponder, that maybe it's something you're going through personally in your kind of wellness journey that's really working for you, that you just think is so important people need to know about?
Yeah. So I said at the beginning of the podcast that I'm now a somatic breathwork practitioner. We did not get to really hit on that. And just keeping on our theme of, the nervous system, we can't heal the body, we can't heal the gut without healing the nervous system. And I'm a big believer of, this is why we have to do a lot of the deep inner work. And I'm a huge proponent, of course, for functional medicine, right? Doing all the testing, do all the optimization. But healing often involves, yes, taking a functional approach, but also being our own advocate for our own healing and really doing a lot of the inner work where a lot of these things are really stemming from. And I think part of really healing the nervous system is getting a lot of these trapped emotions out of the body, because what we don't express when we've gone through a lot of these traumas in our life, our body holds on to. And that's really ultimately what's happening often when we see a lot of contraction and upregulated nervous system, is we see the body holding on to so much emotion and pain. So somatic breath work for me has been a very powerful part of my journey. I had a beautiful experience with it the end of last year. It led to some deep, deep healing in my life.
Breathwork's wild, everybody.
It's like a psychedelic experience, out-of-body experience, right? And so I started to incorporate a lot of that into my healing practices. I would do some like daily breath work. But, what's interesting is I've noticed the compound effect. So I used to have to do a lot more breath work, where now I notice that my nervous system is just a lot more calm and I don't really need to lean into it as much. So I think, what are some of the ways we can actively work on our nervous system? Some of the things we've talked about, like, meditation can be great. Other things that really can create grounding, more play, getting outside, getting in nature, all of these things are incredible. Doing the testing, because nervous system dysregulation can also come from a lot of things that we talked about that may be just off in your body beyond just the chronic stress or the inner work side of things. But I think a powerful tool can really be using
experience, and a lot of people can get there too, to get into the most present state of mind and body. What I mean by that is, in a lot of my breathwork sessions that I've gone through, is, you get hypoxic. So basically you get to a point to where, and especially if it's guided, like you actually won't be breathing. You'll get to a point to where you're not holding your breath. You're just in a state to where your body doesn't need any new oxygen and it doesn't need to expel any CO2. You're just existing. And it is the most trippy, present moment to where I don't need to bring in anything. I don't need to let anything go. And I can just be in a way that I never have before. Have you ever, you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever experienced that?
I know exactly what you're talking. And there's minimal thoughts. You're
it's
fully,
like meditation.
You're fully all of you.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's bliss. It's bliss. It's incredible. Well, it's so good to see you again.
So good to see you.
Glad to have you back on the show. Yeah. And I'm going to let you get going here soon. I know you got a lot of fun coming up. And my last question is, taking kind of all of what we just talked about, wrapping it up on a bow, putting it through the lens of ever forward. What does that mean to you? If I were to ask you, Rachel, how do you live a life ever forward? What would you say?
I'd say it's living our most authentic version of ourself. It's our most expressive version of ourself. It's being all of who we need to be. It's leaning into doing a lot of the inner work, leaning into the fear. It's unraveling all of these stories of who we think we have to be and really coming back to self and healing at the core. It's a return back to self. It's a return back to our most authentic version of us. It's a return back to love. And I think that's really the journey that we're all on. And that's truly what health is. I don't know we ever reach a point of like pure health and wholeness, but I really think, this is the beautiful journey. And for me, authenticity is living an ever forward life.
Never a right or wrong answer. I always appreciate everyone's interpretation.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that one. Thank you. Where can my audience go to connect with you, learn more about your work and what you do?
Yeah, you can check out my Instagram, Rachel Scheer. My practice is Rachel Scheer Nutrition. If you want to learn all about working with me and my team and taking a functional medicine approach, you can go to rachelscheer.com.
And that's SCHEER.
SCHEER.
Yeah,
People think it's a Rachel's cheer. That's how you won't forget it. A guy actually said to me once, like, I thought you were a cheerleader for a long time, and it was Rachel's cheer. But then I realized that was your last name, Scheer.
My mind went to,
I'll take it.
You got to capitalize that in the holiday time. And, Rachel's cheer. You got to have like
Rachel's
a Christmas
cheer.
party.
Yeah.
I could see that being like a cocktail lineup or something. Well, again, so good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Before I let you go, if I could get that little intro clip, please.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do like 2 just to have it. So take a second, just name, title, whatever you want to say about yourself professionally.
Okay.
Pretty
what we talked about, right?
No, I'm not doing that anymore. Just keeping it quick. Yeah. Everybody would be like, what the fuck did I say? So just name, title, and then welcome to Everforward Radio.
There?
I'm going to grab a little side video while I'm doing it. And so have you just look directly into that guy?
So name, title, that's it.
Yeah, whatever you want to say about yourself. Probably the whole thing, keep it about maybe like 15, 20 seconds.
What else to say about myself?
Founder of or functional medicine expert or something like that. And try to just get a little, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, I'm Rachel Scheer here on the Ever Forward Radio, and I am a certified functional medicine practitioner. I received my degree in nutrition science from Baylor University in dietetics, and I'm also a somatic breathwork practitioner. And what else? I hate these.
That's a little bit shorter.
Okay, so short, great.
A little bit shorter, yeah. And
how do I end it?
I recommend doing name, title, and then this is Everforward Radio.
Okay.
Welcome to Everforward Radio. And that can be the sign off.
Okay. I get the most awkward at this part. I'm Ron Burgundy. Hi. Oh, wait.
Sorry. I was going to try to cue you in and I fucked it up.
You get all these.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rachel Scheer. I'm a certified functional medicine practitioner, and I received my degree from nutrition science. Hi, I'm Rachel Scheer. I'm a certified functional medicine practitioner, and also, one more time.
Let's bring it down just a little bit cleaner. I'm Rachel Scheer. How would you say you're like your coach?
Functional medicine practitioner, CEO, yes. Rachel Scheer Nutrition.
Yep, that's great.
Okay.
And then just welcome to Everforward Radio.
Well, we're complicating it.
I'll put my phone down and keep the cameras off.
Okay.
All right, one last thing. I'm going to be a little picky. Just give me just welcome to Everforward Radio. No,
just that alone?
Just welcome to Everforward Radio.
Welcome to Everforward Radio.
There we go.
Okay.
Cool. All right, I lied. I'm going to get one more thing. Who could it be?
What's up?
It's Rachel Scheer.
Rachel's Scheer.
Rachel's Scheer. What can we expect from your
This was a loaded episode. What did we talk about?
You got to tell them.
We talked all about gut health, hormones. We talked all about authenticity. We talked about the nervous system. We talked about men's health, testosterone.
Checking that cortisol.
Am I missing anything? Adrenal health.
And other things that are super, super cool.
Great
I can't tell you because it's going to ruin the surprise. You got to check out the episode. Super cool, trust me.
Check it out.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's cute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Think that was good?
I know it was good.
There was that point I actually felt on my nervous system shift. I started talking about my own stuff. That's what you picked up on?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, what is this?
Yeah.
It's interesting because sometimes that can come out of like nowhere.
Thank you for kind of going there a little bit.
I was like, ooh, I'm feeling a little something.
I love that.
You like that?
In the show because, for me, I pick up on like, you're very, very here and you're not only just talking about something, but you're kind of like,
I had to like bring myself back into
Yeah,
the conversation a little bit because I was like, okay, what's happening?
I think that makes for a very real conversation.
I got a little bit like upregulated.
You good? Yeah.
I'm good now.
Okay.
Yeah, I got back into it. But
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay. You like that part
thank
of
you
it?
for going there with me. Yeah.
It's real. I mean, that's the stuff that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
What else you got on the list? This is your last thing for the day?
Yeah, have dinner with Roxy. That's about it.
Okay. And you guys, you said Hawaii next week.
Monday. Yeah.
I haven't made it out there, even being on the West Coast. I have not made it out there. Would love to.
Never been to Hawaii? I've never been either,
No.
so it'll be my first time. She goes all the time, so
Yeah.
she'll be the tour guide.
She's all over the place. Yeah, her and I,
You guys need to
we talked a
connect.
lot. We know each other. Like, we talk a lot.
Yeah.
It's been like 3 years. We've never met.
Yeah.
We always kind of like miss each other when she's here, and I don't really go to Vegas a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's interesting though what you're saying about like having panic attacks as you're leaning more in.
Yeah.
Like legit. I've
Yeah.
had 2 in my whole life.
Oh, I wish I only had 2 a week. They're like wild.
Really?
Yeah, I have multiple a week.
Like full on.
Oh yeah, like out of body experiences, get dissociated. I had one at the airport the other day. I had one in New York last week. Like, it's
Your whole nervous, your body just takes over.
I'm fucking fried, Rachel. But like I'm fried, but like I'm so weird. I'm
It's
like
a good combo.
never
resonated.
been moving more close to authenticity, like
Yeah.
truly. But it's just as I'm getting closer and closer and closer, and
I meant it. It makes so much sense, and I feel that too. Like, oh.
yeah, it's wild. So it's been ever since like end of January.
I think that was like the very powerful part of the conversation when we had that there. But
Yeah, I'm excited to go back and
yeah,
clip the shit out of that.
I think I had my first panic attack. It was when I lived in California, and that's when I realized that I needed to get out, and that it wasn't California; it was the relationship I was in with Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in a hotel. It
That'll
was
do
like
it.
the overwhelm of everything. It was one like after a massive push in my business, launch of my gut health repair program. My team was in town. I had just done a little bit of like psychedelics for healing work, and then relationship
so
stuff.
So you were like very wide open to
And
a lot
like,
of things.
it's like you do that, but then I had to like go right back into work and things, and I was in a hotel, and I think that was like, if I could pick a number one traumatic experience in my life, like that was it. Yeah, of like in that moment I thought I would like died, like I was about to die. But then the second one, like I think the first time you don't understand what's happening though,
You're just,
so
like, freaking
you're
out.
like. Yeah, something though that helped me a lot. You should look into really working on my nervous system, and it's not like perfect by any means, but I did a stellate ganglion block.
Say that again?
A stellate ganglion block.
What is that?
So we have our vagus nerve, and then we have our stellate ganglia. That's the fight or flight nerve. It's like the sister, but it doesn't get a whole lot of attention. And I met a guy at a mastermind earlier this year, and he said it was one of the best treatments he's ever done for trauma, for nervous system. So
manipulation thing. Right?
it's an injection. They numb for it only lasts 5 hours. So they numb the ganglia. It's a very simple procedure. They do injection, and it completely numbs your fight or flight nerve for that period. But what happens is it disconnects the nerve to the brain, and the brain undoes a lot of its like loops that it's been running on.
Yeah.
So it's actually
It has to like do something else instead of.
treatment for PTSD. So in that period, the brain resets itself during that time. And so when the nerve block comes off, like obviously you go back and you still have, like I still can get, like you saw, like stress, but it's like it doesn't stay with me, and then it like leaves and it passes versus like, and then there's no PTSD, right? Because the PTSD is like an old memory, and the brain resets itself because PTSD is running on this loop, right? So it's like the old trigger, the pattern, I go back into it, nervous system goes off. So it undoes a lot of those loops. And you do it on both sides. You do one side one day, then you do the other side the other day. And it's been a very powerful treatment for PTSD. I did my first one actually only 3 weeks ago.
Wow. Okay.
I did 3 weeks ago. That's why I talk about the nervous system so much, because it's been a huge part of my healing journey. But I'm actually going to go do a second one, because like as you do them, it kind of continues to bring you down a lot more.
Where do you get that done?
I'll send you the guy. You want to fly to him. He's in Maryland. There's like other people who do it, but he has he does it with like an ultrasound. It's very, very precise with how he does it. He treats a ton of vets.
Is it like a pressure thing, or like an injection, or?
It's an injection.
Injection.
Yeah. So it's like what you would get if you were to get like teeth surgery with like the lidocaine kind of numbing stuff, injecting it into that nerve. But it's like when I did that, I'm like, I feel so tired. And they're like, it's funny, I didn't actually give you anything that's like a sedative. I just turned off temporarily your fight or flight nerve. And
that's pretty cool. I'm very interested.
And the thing is, it stays after. It's not just during, because of that. Yeah. Undoes a lot of the loops. So it's actually the most effective for PTSD. And it's also been shown to reduce anxiety up to 50% because of the whole nervous system.
I would love 50% less anxiety. Damn, okay.
You just have to fly to Maryland. It's $2,000 for the treatment to do both sides. Very worth it. I'll send you some info.
Yeah,
but if you're struggling with panic attacks.
Anything is worth it these days.
And that.
Yeah.
Because it just like completely just brings you down.
Interesting.
I haven't yet to like talk about it yet, because I'm like, I'm also testing it out, because I'm like, it was 2 weeks ago. I'm like, I like want to see the results of it. Yeah. And the biggest thing that I've just known is like, I'm like, okay, because at first I was like, I'm not going to ever go into a stress response at all. Because I don't know, sometimes you're like, it's going to get rid of everything. I'm just going to be neutral. I'll be superhuman. Yeah. But no. But it's like, I'll like go into it, but then I'll quickly, it's like a normal stress response. It'll be like, I'll go into it and then I'll come out. And then like, I don't get as worked up. Yeah.
That's great. That's ideal.
Like even in this, I think there was a little bit of like, all right, kind of going into it. And then where before, like for me, like if I would sometimes go into it, I would like stay in it a bit and it'd be hard to come back.
Yeah. And then probably like ruminate later, or just, your downstream effects for a while. Shit. Okay. Life, man, never gets easier, huh?
I think it does.
Human experience.
I hope.
It like does, but it doesn't. I feel like the more that I grow and expand and you heal and do all these things, it's like you become so much more aware.
It's like the compound of all these things over a lifetime, and the backpack we're wearing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was interesting when I did the injection, and I'm just laying there, and Alec was like crying, and he's like, "This is who you are." He's like, "How you feel right now is just who you are. Truly, it's like the baseline." And I was like, "Fuck."
Damn.
No drugs. Well, I guess it's a drug, but
I never got the drugs covered.